4th of October 2019.
Good morning, everyone. We'll start with prayer and the pledge. So let's pray. Lord, we come to you today. We thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to live and to serve in this community. We ask that you would bless this community, bless the local, state, and national leaders as they make decisions for the citizens. We ask that you bless this commission with wisdom and judgment as they make decisions for our customer owners. And we ask that you bless our leadership team with wisdom and judgment as they operate and manage the utility. And as always, Lord, we ask that you keep our employees safe as they are out there working every day for our community. We ask that you would bless this food for nourishing our bodies and bless us and for your service. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we will jump right in with the 5-year financial plan and forecast that we usually do. We do every fall. Jason is going to go through. We'll do the water first, and then we'll do the electric, and that'll lead us right into item 2 on the bond refunding and redemption. So, Jason, take it away.
Okay. Well, try to make this brief and mostly painless. But at any point, if you have questions, just feel free to stop. So, as always, we'll start out with water and then move over to electric. On both of these, we're going to be looking at 6 fiscal years, the current fiscal year, fiscal 20, and then 5 years beyond that, fiscal 21 through 25. So, looking at water, a couple summary points to start out with. I think by the end of this presentation, you'll see that water is in pretty good financial health, and we expect that it will continue to be that throughout the projection period. To start out with, we'll look at a few assumptions. The number of retail customers and their usage has been flat, pretty much flat the last couple of years. We're projecting that to continue, with one major exception. One of the largest customers on the water system is the Owensboro station, and so with its shutdown in 2021, we expect loss of water revenue from Owensboro station. So we do have that in our forecast. We included that when we changed the retail rates last year, so we'll be able to cover it. Wholesale usage, and anytime I say wholesale on water, that means the 3 county water districts. We expect slight increases in their usage over the projection period. On retail revenue, as you all know, we just implemented on June 1st, the second phase of a 2-phase rate increase, about 20% in October of 2018, and about another 12% on June 1st of this year. So the next projected rate increases, and this is the same timing and the same magnitude that we presented last year, are increases of about 5% each in fiscal 25 and 26. Now, we all know this. 2025 is a long way away. A whole lot can happen between now and then, but that's our best projection at this point. On expenses, the larger expenses and those that we know don't increase in a linear manner, we modeled those explicitly. Those that we can project in a linear manner, we escalated them at 3 to 5%, depending on what the expense is. A large assumption on capital and bonding. On the water system, we just borrowed $48.6 million in September of 2018. The primary use of those funds was to fund the cabin expansion that's ongoing. In the projection period, we don't have any more bonding assumed. We will be able to cover our capital needs out of revenues, rates, and reserves. One note back on this is that fiscal 20 is the first year of full debt service on this new debt, so that's included in our projections as well. So starting to look at some of our some graphs representing some of the inputs and the outputs of the water forecast. The first one I have here is revenue. The 3 components of revenue I have broken out are retail in the blue at the bottom, wholesale, water districts in the green in the middle, and then a small sliver at the top of the city. Retail, you see a little bit of an increase in 2019 and 20. That's the rate increases we we talked about. You see a decrease in retail in 2021, that's ESS going away. And you see increases in wholesale over the last couple of years and into 2021. That's a result of the implementation of the new contract amendments that we all signed in mid-2018 with the 3 water districts. And you do see a slight increase out in 2025 with the projected retail rate increase that I mentioned a couple slides ago. On revenue requirements, just going through this, the 4 bars represent the major components of revenue requirements. Those are relatively stable. One small increase out in 2023 or so in the green portion, which is capital. That's about when the bond funds run out, and at that point, that's when we start paying 100% of our capital plan out of reserves. The red line at the top, that's important. That's our projected revenue. You see that it is essentially right at the top of the bars. So revenue matches revenue requirements. That's the cost-based utility model. That's how it's supposed to work. That means we're not over or under collecting revenue. We're collecting what it takes to operate the utility. And you do see a slight uptick in that again in 2025 at our next projected rate increase. Breaking down expense a couple different ways. First, by functional component, we've got 6 lines on here. Again, mostly flat increases, a couple of exceptions. The brown line towards the bottom in pumping, you see a little bit of a decrease from 21 to 22. The reason for that is that we think that the new expanded cabin plant is going to be a more efficient user of electricity than our current setup of Plan A plus the existing cabin plant. And then you see an increase from 2020 up to 21 in treatment, the green bar at the top. A couple reasons for that. A big one is changing the makeup of the chemicals used to treat water when we move to the new cabin plant. That's a little bit more expensive. And then also a small impact from ESS shutting down and some of the administrative O&M associated with running ESS switching over to water. Another way of looking at expenses, kind of the same story we just saw, a little bit more condensed version of it. A increase in fixed O&M in 21, slight decrease in variable O&M at the same time. So all those inputs that we just looked at result in a couple of metrics. As you all have seen before, we look at metrics on both water and electric to make sure we're meeting all the required KPIs that we try to measure. The first one that I want to display here is days of operating cash. The yellow bar is the absolute minimum requirement, 125 days. We have a target where we'd really like to be at 200. The blue bars show where we project to be at the end of each fiscal year. So you see it's dropping over time. The reason for the projected rate increase in 25 is this, is days cash. So you see that with the projected rate increase in 25, it goes back up a little bit. Again, above the minimum, above the requirement in all years. Debt service coverage ratio, the water system is actually in pretty good shape on covering its debt service needs, debt service requirements. And so you can see that it's above both the goal, the requirement, the minimum, and the target, the goal in all years. And you see the same uptick in 2025 with the projected rate. And so in summary, thankfully the water system is relatively simple, but even more so, it's in good financial health after securing the 3 major things we did: the 2018 bonds to expand the cabin plant, the water district contract amendments to share those costs, and the retail rate increases. So we don't anticipate any additional borrowing. We anticipate stable rates through 2024. And again, the water system's in pretty good shape. So before I move to electric, what questions do we have on, does anyone have on water? So moving to electric. So a couple of summary points before I start. Electric continues to have a challenge in covering its debt service. You'll see that throughout the presentation. But the good news is the electric system has a lot of things going for it. It has adequate reserves. It has lower cost than we had as of a couple presentations ago.
We had to stop, we had to interrupt, we
Yeah.
can't see your presentation. It's in some kind of book, PDF format.
Oh,
But, yeah, I normally do that, so.
It says it's corrupted.
This is what's been trying to print. Let me go and fix that real quick.
Okay.
You just want to go on and I'll.
I
like-
can tell
like-
jokes.
Ooh.
Maybe hair joke.
He did have his instrument. So we figured out who blew up our printer, huh?
At least Jason's version's not corrupted. Well, first slide.
Yeah, we're good. We've had some copier problems lately on this floor, so we're now complaining Brittany for the corrupted file. It was entertaining.
Yeah, this, went to print out one copy of this forecast, and the copier decided to just keep printing. And before we knew it, it had printed out about 20 copies. We had to go in and make it stop. We don't know what's going on with it. Were they?
I don't think it printed all the way though.
Oh, and didn't
That's
print
why
them
he's
correctly?
printing it
Yeah, on the
goes
back of it,
as
it say-
Oh, it's kind of trying to reset, so yeah.
Yeah.
Just printed a copy of repair manual in the last 2 days. and just Scratching my nails.
Just let her do it, because as soon as I get to do something, she'll be done.
Drum off, roll, try again.
What do we need to log out, log back in?
I think if you just refresh it at the
It
top.
came up on
That was quick.
That should work now. Huh?
That was good. We won't make fun of that screen. It's not
Mine's
big
not
enough.
working, but yeah, I'm fine. I've got plenty of copies of it elsewhere.
Otherwise, we'd stop watching
Watch the screen. Everybody get it? We may just have to give you yeah, mine will.
Here.
I got all the way out. Mine worked. I think you get all the way out.
Log out and log back in.
I did that by accident.
By accident. It's done me too. That was quick. He did 2 clicks and it was better.
Yeah. All right, Jason, let's move on.
Okay. First slide started out to kind of give us a frame of reference, looking at the previous projection, the one we did roughly this time last year. Major assumptions were Unit 1, ESS Unit 1 shutting down in summer 2019. It did. The assumption then, and continues to be the assumption now, Unit 2 shutting down 2020. Fiscal 20 rate actions, we projected a 12% base rate increase with a simultaneous ECA rate decrease that more than offset it. Overall rate decrease in each year of the projection period through 2024, and a 2-phase bond restructuring plan, a relatively small one in 2019 and a much larger one in 2020. Our current rates, as background, The city commission approved a 4% rate increase, base rate increase on June 1st, 2019. That was smaller than the 12% that we projected at this time last year. Simultaneously, a ECA rate decrease from 5.07 cents to 4.3 cents went into effect. And as we projected, that ECA rate decrease was more than the base rate increase. The environmental adders, the three components of the ECCA rate, are averaging about 1.7 cents per kilowatt hour currently. Wholesale price, or wholesale revenue, the assumptions behind it, and again, this applies to fiscal 20. After fiscal 20, we don't anticipate any interaction with the wholesale market. Dispatch model was updated with September 2019 forward prices. That's what the prices in our presentation are based on. Capacity revenue, consistent with our current reality. And as expected, a significant decrease in both wholesale revenue and ESS expenses, both when Unit 1 shut down and then rejected when Unit 2 shuts down. Commerce Smith Station, most of these apply to the current fiscal year as well. And all of these are the same assumptions that we used in last year's projection. No remaining planned outages on Unit 2. Its last planned outage was the spring. ESS Unit 2 shutting down in June of 2020. And both increasing outage rates and decreasing expenses as Unit 2 gets closer to shutdown. On capital, at the beginning of this fiscal year, we had $3.7 million of bond funds remaining. Most of that we project to be spent during fiscal 20, with a small amount of it being spent in fiscal 21. But then after that's expended, no new money, bond issues are included in this projection. So as we discussed at the time we did the fiscal 20 budget, the plan for fiber to the home is to continue paying that out of reserves, not borrowing for it. Routine capital is expected to average about $6 million, a little bit more than $6 million a year during the projection period. On expenses, as I mentioned on water, the expenses that are large and have a lot of variance in them, we model those explicitly, but then everything else we project with 3, 4, 5%, depending on which expense it is per year. Most ESS expenses are expected to end with its shutdown. There are a few lingering expenses after it shuts down, but those taper off as well. And then obviously at the same time, the expenses of buying power from external parties starts. And then there is a shift in between the electric system departments in general and administrative expenses when ESS shuts down. So those are kind of our general assumptions. Now I want to go into the two major assumptions that drive this model. The first of those assumptions is the bond restructuring plan. I want to explain a little bit about it. The second one is retail rates. So as you remember from last year, when we update all these inputs and look at our results, we start looking at metrics and seeing how our metrics shape up. And just like the projection last year, the debt service coverage ratio, including the city transfer, was not where it needed to be, and I'll show a graph on that in a minute. As a reminder, the formula for that metric is net revenues, so that's revenues, operating revenues minus operating expenses, divided by the sum of debt service and the transfer to the city. It's calculated for each fiscal year, meaning that if you have a surplus in one fiscal year, that can't help out a deficit in the next fiscal year. Each fiscal year has to stand on its own. So looking at that graphically, the dotted blue line is the absolute minimum that we can maintain to satisfy the bond rating agencies, 1.0, meaning that our net revenues exactly cover our debt service and city transfer. If we don't implement this plan, our results look like that red line. Obviously, it's bad and getting significantly worse as we move out through the projection period. And so we have to do something about that. And the primary strategy to address that issue is this bond restructuring plan. So a few slides on that. So you can think of this like a mortgage. So you're paying off your mortgage early. When you take cash, pay off your mortgage early, your monthly payments stop at that point. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're doing that to a part of our debt. So paying off cash now to save future outlays. In May of this year, we used about $3 million of reserves to pay off part of the 2010 bonds. That saved a little bit more than that amount in future debt service. We expect to close in December 2019 this year on a significantly larger part of that plan, using about $14.3 million of reserves to redeem some of our 2010 and 2013 bonds, and to do a refinancing on the remainder of the 2010 and 2013 bonds. And when we do that, it's going to result, all that together is going to result in about $24.5 million worth of savings, debt service savings, through fiscal 27. That's about $2.7 million per year. So it's significant savings, and it allows us to address this debt service coverage issue. To show the effect of that plan after it's implemented, this is what our debt service looks like. The red line is if we don't do the plan. The white line is if we do. And so you see that without it, we will exceed $25 million a year in debt payments on the electric system. With it, it drops to about $19 million. So again, it's significant savings during that time period. One key takeaway from this slide is you see that it does not extend the term of the debt. After 2027, the only debt left is the 2017 telecom bonds, which is a relatively small debt service payment. But it does not extend. Another way to lower your current year debt payments is to move the term out. We did not do that. This is purely paying off principal. Okay. We did take a look at several different options and try to figure out what's the right level of reserves to use to redeem debt. And we settled on the plan that we're presenting today, which is using a little bit more than $14 million worth of debt. And we looked at options that were both less than and more than $14.3 million. Obviously, if you spend less reserves on defeasing debt, you've got more reserves available for other needs, but you have less of this cash flow debt service savings impact, which is what we're looking for, and vice versa. And we determined that $14.3 million is the right amount, and that's the amount we're seeking approval for. The reasons are, as I said, less reserves does not give you the bang for your buck on debt service savings. More reserves takes away money from future cash needs. As of right now, we know there's a couple of really uncertain cash needs on the horizon. Big ones are decommissioning of ESS. How much is it going to cost after it's shut down to render that plant site safe and suitable for whatever its next use is? We don't know. We're in the process of finalizing that study, but we know that's coming up, and we know that's going to require some amount of cash. And then, in addition to that, sometime in 2021, thereabouts, we're going to start another integrated resource plan, another IRP, and try to figure out, we're going to figure out what we do for power supply after the Big Rivers contract ends in 2026. There could be cash costs come out of that IRP, whether that's transmission additions, new generation, market participation costs, whatever it might be, is going to require cash, some amount of it, and pretty good range. It could be a different amount of cash depending on which option you're chosen out of that. Those are going to become a lot more clear before the end of this projection period, but they're not clear right now. So when you go into a period of uncertainty, the best cash position to be in is a strong one, and that's what we're projecting right now. Now the good news is, once those do become clear, you can do this bond redemption. You can do more bond redemption in one or more future fiscal years. So if ESS decommissioning is settled and decided, and then the IRP is complete, and it looks like there's additional cash available to use for bond redemption, that's certainly an option. But we did not model additional ones simply because of those uncertainties. I've got a graph. The next slide is a graph that shows this. But the good news is, it looks like without any, if no unanticipated, unexpected interruptions happen or cash needs arise, if you wait long enough, you really can defease quite a bit of that. There's a whole lot going on this graph, but just in short, the bars are the remaining principal at the end of each fiscal year. So at the end of fiscal 20, we expect to have almost $120 million worth of bond principal remaining on the electric system, broken out between ESS, distribution, and telecom, as you see in the different colors. By the end of 2020, the green dots are the expected cash balance after requirements. So we have a general fund requirement, so we set aside part of the general fund to pay current year expenses, and then we have a reserves requirement, and that's for things like storms, hotel counterparties, different things we set aside reserves to pay for. The green is the projected balance minus those requirements. We can't call it a surplus, that's not accurate. We can't really call it an excess, but it's the projected cash balance minus those requirements. It's the cash available for something like redeeming additional bonds. And so what that shows us, for example, is in 2023, we project that there will be enough cash available to pay off everything but the telecom bonds. If you wait until the end of fiscal 2024, we project that there will be enough cash available to pay off all the bonds, including telecom. So it works just like a mortgage. Every month you make a payment, your principal balance goes down, and you see that impact. But we do expect that, barring something unexpected, there can be additional bond redemption actions in the future. We just haven't modeled them now because we don't know what's on the near horizon with some of the uncertainties I mentioned. Okay. So the next major assumption I want to talk about are retail rates. So if you compare last year's projection to this year's projection, a whole lot of moving parts, a lot of things changed. Here's two major ones. The savings from the bond restructuring plan are more because of lower interest rates than what we were projected last year. That's great. But another input that changed is the retail sales projection. It's lower in this year's projection than it was in last year's projection. I've got a slide on that. The yellowish line at the top is last year's projection. The blue line at the bottom is this year's projection. That's about 16,000 megawatt hours, 16 million kilowatt hours. That translates to $1.5 to $2 million of less base rate revenue per year. The difference between those two lines. So it's not a small amount. Every year at when we do our budget, our engineering department sits down and looks at recent history as well as known movements in customers and does a forecast of our retail sales. And you see the difference between last year's forecast and this year's forecast. It's a significant amount. It requires a significant amount of it results in a significant amount of lost revenue. So with that as a background, on rates, again, June 1st, there was about a 4% base rate increase with a simultaneous more than offsetting ECA rate decrease. In our projection last year, we didn't think either one of those would need to be moved through at least fiscal 24. And because of the decreasing environmental rates, ECCA rates, we thought that overall, we projected that overall rates would decrease each year through 2024. So looking at this projection, all that holds true through 2023. We don't think there's additional need for base rate increases or ECA rate movements through fiscal 23. But because of the decreased retail sales that I just showed you, we think we'll need about 5.5% total during fiscal 24 and 25. So, 2 3/4% each year, 2% one year, 3.5% the next year, whatever it is, about 5.5% total base rate increase. But again, it's more than offset by ECA rate decreases in each of those fiscal years. So combined with the ECCA rate decreases that are projected to happen in each of those years, it's still an overall decrease in each fiscal year compared to the year before. And I'll show you some slides on that. So these are the three components of ECCA, SO2, NOx, and mercury. And the top is the top of the bars is the total of those three components. So those are decreasing pretty significantly in the first couple of years, simply because the fixed costs recovered through ECCA are really rolling off, and then the variable costs are tapering off as ESS shuts down. So before we look at the next slide on which is overall rates, just remember it's a projection. A lot of things can change. I've already mentioned a couple of great big uncertainties. And so obviously we evaluate this continuously, and this is our projection as of now. The good news is they're decreasing, and when you look at the projections of any of our neighboring utilities, those look like they're going up. So OMU's relative rates should be getting in really good shape. So this is our potential residential rate as of this projection. If you looked at any of the other classes, we show residential kind of as a representative, but if you look at any of the other classes, it's the same shape, just different numbers over the left side. The blue dots at the top are our average projected fiscal 20 residential rate, about 14.7 cents. The white line is our current projection. The green line is our projection as of this time last year. And so you see that for the most part, we project residential rates to be even lower than we projected last year. That's mostly on the strength of the additional savings from the bond restructuring plan, because the interest rates are lower now than they were when we did the projection last year. Breaking that down into the three components, the blue bar at the bottom is base rates, the green bar in the middle is ECA, the red sliver at the top is ECCA. As you see, ECCA, as I showed on a couple of slides ago, is going down to almost nothing in 2025. You see in 24 and 25 the small increases in base rate, but you see drops in ECA in both of those years. Looking at the same data a different way, what you see here are the changes in each component of rates compared to the previous fiscal year. So in 2021, 22, and 23, there are no projected changes to base rates, the blue bar, or ECA rates, the green bar. There's just changes to the ECCA, decreases to the ECCA, and the overall rate, the white bar. And you see the small increases in base rate in 24 and 25, more than offset by the decreases in the green bar, the ECA, and the ECCA in each of those years, and therefore overall decrease. Again, that's all the details, but this is the result. Looking at that white line, decreases in each fiscal year, just like we presented last year. Looking at some of the inputs that go into, that are behind all these numbers, revenue requirements. This is everything that has to be covered by retail revenue coming into the system. They're going down, primarily on the strength of O&M, or on the decrease of O&M. One thing I always try to keep in perspective is the impact of shutting down ESS in 2020 versus 2023. So we went back a couple of projections ago to one that included ESS shutting down in 2023, and that's the red line. And so you see that that making that decision, going to the Big Rivers PPA, reduced our revenue requirements and allowed us to do what we presented that we're hoping to do on rates. Looking at that same projection, retail or residential rates topped out at about 15.3 cents, and we're not having rates anywhere near that. So the revenue requirements bears that out. Looking at retail, cost of supply, a whole lot of detail on here. Two things I'd like to point out to you is the blue bar at the bottom. That's the cost of ESS. You see that it's obviously drastically decreasing as we go throughout time. We do still have ESS ESS debt service and some residual O&M in future years. The brown bar right above it is external purchase power. When ESS decreases, that increases, but if you look at the top of that bar, that's the sum of those two, and it's decreasing over time. Again, it shows that we're at a net revenue requirement savings as ESS shuts down. A couple of slides I'll go through real quickly are the wholesale revenues versus gross margin, wholesale net income. Gross revenues and gross margin went down from 19 to 20. That's simply because Unit 1 shut down. We have less length in the wholesale margin, in the wholesale market. But net income went up. Shutting down Unit 1 helped our wholesale results for fiscal 20. Another slide, ESS cost of production versus wholesale prices. The key takeaway here is that the margin, and that's the difference between wholesale prices and our variable cost of production, continues to shrink. In 2018, it was almost $9 a megawatt hour. In 2020, it's budgeted to be about $7.40 a megawatt hour. And that just shows us what we already know. We see it in other presentations, that wholesale prices continue to decrease. Okay. So with all that said, if we project everything that I just presented, it fixes the debt service coverage issue. The red line is if we don't implement that plan. The white line is if we do. Now, it looks like it's, everything's great, and it is, but I have to emphasize that's a razor-thin margin. So it's above 1, but not by much. So we're keeping rates as low as possible, and still mitigating this issue. But any upset in any of the major assumptions will cause us to have to do something else to mitigate this issue. The days cash metric, the blue line, the dotted blue line is the target. We satisfy that metric in all years. The ECA balance, this is what customers either owe OMU or OMU owes to customers on ECA. The white line is our projection. The blue dotted lines at the top and bottom are the thresholds, the limits, either plus or minus $20 million currently. That's a utility commission policy. I show it decreasing to plus or minus $10 million out in 23, but you see that somewhere out there, we expect that you all could vote to lower that back to plus or minus $10 million. A couple of years ago, to keep rates low, you all voted to move it from $10 million to $20 million, but we project that you could move that back if you choose to do so in the future.
Jason, how much cash is there between the 200-day and the 600-day that we'll have?
Well, and there's a couple impacts that go into this graph. Part of it is it costs us less to run a utility that has less cost, and so a day of cash is not as much. But this kind of shows your absolute cash balances, the green dots, and so right now we expect we have above our minimums somewhere around $50 million. We think that's going to top out somewhere around 70. But really the biggest impact to days cash is right here. It takes less cash to run OMU with the BREC PPA than it does currently, and so a day of cash is worth less. So that's the biggest part of the increase. Does that answer?
Yes, thank you.
So, in summary, the debt service coverage ratio continues to be a challenge, but this plan successfully meets it and successfully addresses it. We expect that we can continue to use available cash to do either further bond restructurings to decrease rates. The strong cash position will position OMU well to address whatever unanticipated needs are out there. And the really good news and bottom line of all this is that rates were first decreased on June 1st, 2019, and we expect to be able to continue to do that each fiscal year during this projection period. Lynn's gonna go through the bond plan.
I just have one question.
Yeah.
You said several slides earlier that if cash flow warranted in the future, we possibly could pay off telecom bonds. Can we do that?
Yep. We
So-
can do the same,
So we can take electric servers and pay off reserves and pay off telecom, is that not?
You can cash the
electric
fees at any
subsidizing
time.
telecom?
The telecom would still have to pay the electric system, but we wouldn't owe it, we'd be paying ourselves instead of the
Oh,
debt.
okay, okay,
Yeah.
that, I understand, thank you.
other questions.
Before we switch to
Amazing,
Lynn,
that would be awesome if we
Wouldn't
could
it?
do all those things.
Debt-free?
Really.
Those are all trying to head.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
All right, good job, Jason, thank you.
No, thank you, Judge.
So Lynn's got a few slides to kind of introduce the bond refunding, item 2 on our agenda, so.
I just have a couple slides I'm gonna put there. I can't really read that, but basically in that total column over there, it's, the bond, issuance will be about 76.6 million is our projection from our, financial advisor at this time, depending on what the interest rates are, the 10-year treasury and the, MMD rates on November 20th, which is our sale date. That's what will determine our total. So, right now, we're expecting them to sell at a premium because the rates are so low. We expect to sell about 1.56% is our interest rate, apparently, approximately. It'll be less than the 10-year MMD because we're only going out 7 years. The equity contribution, we've added the, to defease the 1991B bonds, the bond council added those in as of yesterday because they're to be paid off 1/1/2020 anyway. But if we go on and include them in this deal, we can use the debt service interest reserve cash we've got set aside that we wouldn't have been able to use to 1/1/2020. And this will, when you use the debt interest reserve funds, because the 1991B bonds were taxable when they were issued, and that's set aside was a taxable fund, they're researching to see if those funds will be restricted, and we'd have to use them on capital or something maybe for the plant, because 1991B bonds were plant related. So they said it is an appropriate use of those reserve funds, if we include it in this deal, to use as payoff debt for the refunding. So that's why they've slid those in there as of yesterday, the 1991B bonds. So that increased our total deal to $106,657,000 approximately. But that's just going to be our cash going in and straight to U.S. Bank to pay those bond holders on 1/1/2020, and then the bond debt's gone for the 1991B bonds. The 2002A taxable bonds for the plant did not have a call date in them, so we cannot refund those or do anything different with those. So they will go through to 1/1/2020. But with the 1991 bonds being paid off, that frees up our, it changes in our bond covenant to allow us to not have so much interest reserves sitting aside. Right now, it's like 19 million, that'll go down to like 9.6 million. So that frees up that cash to use for this deal, instead of using our reserve and contingency funds of 12.4 million, we'll use that 7.7. So out of the reserves fund, we'll actually only use about 5 million of our cash. So that leaves more in our reserves and contingency fund that we can do whatever we want with, or it's not restricted by any way. So the estimated net present value savings is about 7.7 million as of today, which is about 7.4% in savings. The cost, we expect the cost of issuance to be about $325,000 or 0.42% of the bond total par, and the underwriter's discount to be about $207,000. So our payments before we did the cash defeasance in May were about 25.5 million, equal all the way out to 26, and then dropped down to 12 million. Now it'll be 19.3 million all the way out, 24, 25, 26, and then the ESS debt will be paid off in 1/1/26. The distribution debt will be paid off in 1/1/27. That's the chart there that shows our debt is stable to the end. And then you see the telecom debt is a small amount that goes out through 37. But again, we hope to have cash to pay that off before we get there. So we'll be, maybe in 24, we'll be completely debt-free on the electric system, depending on what the decommissioning costs are. we've got 8.4 million set aside cash for decommissioning. So anything above that will have to come out of general fund or reserves. This is our timeline for our bond issuance. We're going to meet with the city for our first reading on October 15th. November 5th will be their second reading and hopefully approval. And then we'll price the bonds on November 20th, and then by the closing, where all the money exchanges in.
So do you feel pretty good about that time frame on the cost of bond?
Make a motion to adopt transfer of funds not to exceed 15 million from the electric reserve and contingency funds. The electric general fund will be used to contribute to the refunding and redemption of certain outstanding bonds.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we need another to adopt the resolution to approve the issuance of the bond. So that one will be, you skipped ahead to the one, we need to do that one too. But we need two separate motions. So I make a motion that we adopt the proposed resolution approving the issuance of bonds for the REIT. Recommended that the city, or the city commission adopt the proposed ordinance regarding the refunding and redemption of certain outstanding electric, light, and power system revenue bonds taxable 2010-A series, 2013 A series, non-taxable 2010 B series, and 2013 B series. And we need to amend that because we did amend the resolution, as Lynn said yesterday, so I apologize for not getting that to you, but the council's still working on it, to also, and to defease the 1991 B series. I added that to my motion.
Second.
Second.
You got a second for Paul?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And we mentioned a couple times in here the decommissioning, and next month we'll be coming, our plan is to come and give you a presentation on several different options for decommissioning and recommendation on what path we would recommend we proceed down, and that will help us set some of these numbers that we're currently not sure what the final number will be. Last action item, and this just came up recently, we've talked about our interconnection with, additional interconnectivity with LG&E, and it was approved back in November under the amended interconnection agreement. And in that was the estimated cost of that, which you all approved when you approved that agreement. LG&E has done the engineering and been out for bids, and that cost has gone up from the 1.9 to about 2.75 million. Tim has been working with them on that. We're hopeful that they won't spend all of that amount. There's some things we can do. One of the things that added to the price, to the cost, is some matting that they think they need to do out there. If you recall, when Big Rivers did their transmission line, all those mats that floated away in the, that they need to do that, but they may not need to. It just depends on the conditions on the ground at the time, so that'll be a big savings. So we may not spend the total amount. We think we've got some contingency that will be under that, but we need to get approval to go up to that amount if that's what the project costs.
You said that's a pretty good increase, you know, almost $1 million.
If they didn't have the matting, that was what, 400?
About $4 to $5, well, actually about $500,000. Line construction costs came in higher than what they anticipated through the bidding process.
Well, it looks like he says a good part of the additional cost was compressing the schedule. Is there any way to quantify what that cost would be if we did not expedite and compress the schedule? In other words, extended time out, what does that cost us relatively?
Yeah, the concern there was some of the other additional transmission lines that were going to cross the other entities that wanted to have them out that long. So they're working with that. There might be an opportunity to increase that for a week or so. But on the flip side of taking those lines out, it could derate the unit output for a certain amount of time. We can't really quantify that until we get closer on the market conditions.
But some of that was, I think Big Rivers, they have to have a line out when they cross them, and they wanted us to, LG to minimize that outage time.
I think the biggest thing is if we can get to that point, ground conditions have not deteriorating significantly from where they are now. There will be a significant savings, but the concern is if we get to that point, the ground conditions further deteriorate, usually the towers and the cranes are gonna need, in that time period, they're gonna have to get in there and complete this job in that timely manner, so we can have that the line service, you know, early to mid-January. So,
Of course, the other thing too is when you're responsible for the cost regarding the estimates, they don't get overly concerned with that accurate estimate.
Yeah.
There's probably an element of that too. And that was an estimate, now they've got bids, so they have their costs.
Motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. So we do have, I think, one item to discuss in a brief closed session. So would ask for a motion to go into closed session, discuss personnel matters pursuant to KRS 618-10-1F, pending litigation pursuant to KRS 618-10-1C, matters which are required to be discussed in privacy.